Okay, here we go. All right. Welcome to everyone to this very special summer edition of Speaker's Corner. I think when I sent this advertisement out, I wanted to let people know we were still here, that there was still fun stuff going on. And today I'm delighted to have Sarah and Latoya from the Assaulted Women's Helpline and Senior Safety Line here to share with you on a number of topics. We were chatting earlier and they're open to questions. We're kind of a smallish group, around 14 right now. So we can have some interaction. They love conversation and discussion. So inviting you to use the chat at that stage and any stage along your presentation and ask questions, and I'll let them know that I have a question, and also questions at the end is great too. So I'll just give a little introduction to Latoya and Sarah, just to introduce them and get it started. We are recording, so we'll put this on the website. I guess I should turn my email off. Let's do that. Okay. And you can mute yourselves too if you'd like while we're having the presentation. So Latoya Dwyer is a service support coordinator from the Assaulted Women's Helpline and Senior Safety Line. And Sarah Prindeville is an information specialist at the same two organizations, Assaulted Women's, I usually say ASWL and SSL, but it's probably just
AWHL.
Yeah, AWHL, okay. And the Senior Safety Line, SSL. So over to the two of you. Thank you so much for agreeing to present. I think this is a great presentation for us to access as family mediators and to really understand what services are available to the families we serve. So thank you.
Thank you for having us today. I will introduce myself first and then I'll let Sarah take over. My name is Latoya and I work at the Assaulted Women's Helpline here. I am a relief counselor and I also work in a training and resource outreach department too as well, along with Sarah doing outreach events, training, and with the help of Sarah. I'm supporting Sarah through updating our database right now. So we're just doing a lot of outreach to, again, let everybody know that we're still here and we're here to offer support. So I'm going to let Sarah take over now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for having us. My name's Sarah. I also work in training, resource, and outreach at the Assaulted Women's Helpline and Senior Safety Line. I'm the information specialist, so I manage our database of community resources that our counselors have access to when they're speaking to folks on the phone. And I also work with Latoya on doing outreach, doing presentations like this, and doing other community events, which have mostly been virtual for the last few years, but eventually we'll get back to being out in the community in person as well. So thank you very much for having us today. We're really happy to be here speaking with you. As Marianne said, we're happy to take questions during if there's something that we say that you have a question about, and we'll also leave some time at the end for questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do and what kind of services we offer. And then I'm going to pass it over to Latoya, and we're going to talk a little bit more about specifics about supporting people who are experiencing abuse, identifying signs, and a little bit about prevention and safety planning or assisting people with their safety. So the Assaulted Women's Helpline is a 24/7 telephone and TTY crisis line for all women in the province of Ontario who have experienced abuse. So that is anyone who identifies as a woman and any kind of abuse, whether it's happening presently and it's an ongoing situation or whether it's something that happened in their past. We also do online counseling. That's not available 24/7. It's a newer service for us. We started almost 2 years ago now, and it's available Monday to Friday from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. So on the online chat, we offer some of the same services. If someone is suicidal or if someone is looking for a shelter space, we do ask them to call us because we can't assess those situations online. But in both cases, we provide counseling, crisis counseling, emotional support for folks who are calling, safety planning with people, and we also do information and referrals to a wide variety of community resources. So that might be referring someone for mediation to you. It might be legal services, it might be counseling, like ongoing counseling, it might be food banks, it might be community centers or senior centers in their area. So a wide variety of resources that people might need access to in addition to seeking shelter space. The helplines, as I said, is open to all women in the province of Ontario who have experienced any form of abuse. And when someone calls the helpline, it's answered by one of our trained counselors. We have a fully professional staff of people who answer the helpline. You can tell them the reason for your call, and you're welcome to share as much or as little information as you like. The helpline is anonymous, so our phone number doesn't appear on people's phone bills. We don't know anything about the people who are calling us except what they choose to share with us. So people can share what they like to with the counselor. And then together with the counselor, they'll look at options that are available if you need information and referral, if you are looking for a shelter space, or to provide you with emotional support. Within Toronto, we are connected to the 14 violence against women shelters, so the counselors have access to see what bed spaces are available there. So if you do have someone who's looking for shelters, we're a good place for them to call just one number, and they can have access to a number of things. So they do a little bit of an intake and then would pass someone over to transfer them over to the shelter, who do their own much more in-depth intake and choose whether to accept the person into the shelter or deny them for some reason. And the helpline also runs the senior safety line. It was started with Ontario Trillium grant funding, I believe, about 10 years ago, and now it's operated by us. So this is the only 24-hour crisis and support line for seniors in Ontario who are experiencing any type of abuse or neglect. So similar to the AWHL, it's answered by the same counselors. They can receive emotional support, safety planning, information, and referrals. And for both services, we work with translators, 2 different services. So if someone is not able to communicate in English, or if that's really, really uncomfortable for them, if they're able to communicate to the counselor at the beginning of the call what language it is that they speak, our counselors can connect with one of those services, and they connect to an interpreter somewhere in Canada or the United States who speaks that language. And that person is just there to provide language interpretation. It's still our counselors who are providing all of the services. So this is a senior-friendly service with a live counselor who can help people with emotional support or to navigate some systems that are often difficult for them. And like AWHL line, it's available 7 days a week, 365 days a year. People can also access the online chat for the senior safety line, depending on it's such a diverse population of people who are seniors from 55 or 60 and up. So depending on the person and on their age and comfort with technology, they're probably more likely to be calling us on the phone rather than accessing online, but they can if they choose to. So the senior safety line is open to any senior, people of any gender identity, and can address diverse concerns of people with disabilities, different immigration status, people of color, people of all sexual orientations, transgender, and two-spirit persons. And we also get a number of calls and are happy to provide information to family, friends, neighbors, caregivers, and different kinds of service professionals such as yourself who might have concerns or questions about an older person in their life. So that could be your parent, it could be one of your mediation clients, it could be a neighbor, it could be anyone. We do get quite a lot of calls from people who have questions about how they could assist someone who they feel is in an abusive situation, or what they could do, what kind of options are available. I'm going to talk a little bit about what abuse is and about both elder abuse and intimate partner violence. So abuse generally is any action, threat, statement, or comment by an intimate partner or another person used to control through fear. So this is always about power and control, and that person is always responsible for their behavior. No one ever deserves to be abused. People take on all kinds of beliefs around like, oh, if I had behaved differently, this wouldn't have been happening. Or, you know, this person hit me because I did this, or if I just hadn't made them angry, or if I, you know, had made dinner properly the way they wanted it to, or I was home at a certain time. And those are things that people sort of take on and start to believe, but it's always the abuser who is responsible for their behavior. And this can take on many different forms that we'll talk about shortly. Elder abuse is defined as an intentional act or failure to act that causes or creates a risk of harm to an older adult. This abuse often occurs at the hand of a caregiver or a person the elder trusts. In most situations, this is something that's ongoing. The World Health Organization estimates that around 1 in 6 people aged 60 or older in the world, which I think is about 150 something million people, experience some form of violence, and they predict this number is going to increase with aging populations all over the world in various countries. And it definitely has increased during the pandemic as well, particularly early on in the pandemic, but continuing when seniors in particular were very, very isolated. And we saw certainly a lot of neglect taking place also in institutional settings like long-term care homes. The senior safety line normally takes about 10,000 calls per year over the last few years, but in the first year of the pandemic, and our years run from April to March, so pretty well the first year of the pandemic, there were 39,554 calls. So we saw almost 4 times as many calls from people who had concerns, who were isolated because they had to stay at home, who were being isolated by an abuser, who had a lot more concerns about COVID, concerns about safety, concerns about a lot of people were stuck at home with an abuser. So the call volume went up dramatically and it stayed pretty high. I think we haven't quite hit that peak again. I don't have numbers for this year, but it stayed much higher than normal. And intimate partner violence is abuse or aggression that occurs in a romantic relationship. So intimate partner can refer to your current spouse or dating partner or a former spouse or dating partner. And Statistics Canada reports that more than 4 in 10 women have experienced some form of intimate partner violence in their life. And of course, we know that that's not the same across different groups of women. It's much higher for some people, including Indigenous women, which I think is more than 6 in 10, women with disabilities, women who don't identify as heterosexual. But in general, across women, it's more than 4 in 10. And for a similar statistic, AWHL normally takes about 50,000 calls per year. And in that first year of the pandemic, we got 93,444 calls. The calls changed a little bit in nature. Normally the counselors encourage people to call back when they're not in house with their abuser. So just because it puts them at an increased risk of violence if that person were to find them speaking with a crisis line. But during the pandemic, it changed a little bit and they would speak with people as long as that person was in another room, they were in another part of the house, they were out for a few minutes, they were in the backyard, they were sleeping, whatever the case may be. And so the calls were a lot shorter than normal, because people just didn't have as much time in which they were away from the person who was putting them at risk. So different types of abuse that we see both with older people and in intimate partner violence situations, which could also be experienced by people who are over 55 or 60, certainly. Physical violence, which we think of sometimes as the most obvious one, something that's going to leave a mark. So this is hitting, kicking, any kind of physical force, choking. Emotional or psychological abuse, which is comments, which is sort of this like coercive control, which is isolating people from their family and friends through different kinds of comments. We see financial abuse very commonly, especially with calls from the senior safety line. So that could be outright stealing. It could be denying people access to their financial records. It could be tracking their activities and where they're going, what they're doing via a credit card or a debit card. And with older people, we do see a lot of concerns around things like power of attorney. We also have sexual abuse. We have spiritual abuse, where people's religious beliefs or spiritual beliefs are being sort of weaponized against them to convince them to stay or that they're a bad person or something like that. And we also have neglect, again, I think a little bit more often when we're talking about older people. So this could be withholding care. Maybe someone usually picks up your groceries or your medication and they refuse to do that except under certain circumstances, or they won't do it at all. So a wide variety of things that can constitute abuse. And I'm going to pass it over to LaToya now to talk a little bit more about the context of abuse and misconceptions and what you can do to help folks in that situation.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So what constitutes abuse? Um, Abuse starts when a partner feels like they need to have power and control over a person. And if they successfully obtain that power, that control, that's when the abuse starts. And oftentimes it manifests more if the person is isolated. Um, and so oftentimes you'll find people that have experienced abuse, they were told to stay away from family members and friends because they were bad people. They are jealous of their relationships and all this stuff. So that further isolates the victim with the abuser in the home alone. Um, and again, so this can cause because they feel like they have low self-esteem. They may feel jealous or they may feel inferior to the person based on their social status. If the person is more educated than them, they have a job, they're more social. Just they want to take over that person. So this person has to then become relying on them. If they're happy, then the victim can be happy, the survivor can be happy. If the abuser is sad, then you have to be sad too as well. So everything will be based around the abuser and how they want to maneuver. It's about their power, and again, it's about their control. Once they get all that, now that's how they get to move freely and do the abuse to you. And that will cause, again, isolation. So you no longer is in contact with the people who love you and who care for you because you were told that they were jealous of you. You were told that they were mean. You're told that they didn't mean well for you. So then you're sticking with the person that is providing you, that you deemed emotional support and other kind of support that family members can't really provide for them anymore because the partner has decided that they want for them to be alone. But it's important to know that if you are a victim or survivor of abuse, is that you're never the cause of the abuse. We find that when abusers abuse, they often say it's your fault. Like, I'm going to hit you today because you perhaps did not prepare my meal well. My meal was not hot enough for me. You did not sleep with me when I wanted to. Um, I did not like the way that you dressed. Like, I'm just upset today. So therefore, everybody in the house is going to be upset just as much. But it's important for us as if we have experienced abuse and we're surviving, or we are a victim of it, just happens. It's important for us to know that we did not cause that. We did not cause we did not cause for this, but it's kind of hard for if a person has been abused all their lives, the majority of their life, they're going to take on everything to say it was my fault. Perhaps I should have heated his food or perhaps I should have heated the food before they got home. Perhaps I should have exercised more so I didn't, lose my figure after having a child or what the case is. Perhaps I should have given you the credit that you need to get the home or cell phone or credit card or whatever the case is. I should have done all those things. And if I've done it, then you wouldn't have reacted that way. But it's important to remember that you can do all these things. But if they feel like they're losing control or they feel like they have the power over you, they will abuse because that's just what they're going to do. They're going to abuse you. And you're going to be falling the victim of this abuse. And you're going to be taking that on. So whatever they tell you that you start to embody those things. Whether you're conscious of it or no longer or not conscious of it, you still do the things that they're telling you to do. But the thing is, you'll never do it right. You'll never do it good enough. You're always going to be subject to abuse because this person may feel like they're losing control. Perhaps when you got with this person, you were not educated. You didn't have a license, you didn't have anything. But now that you will decide that, you know what, I want to go back to school. I actually want to get my G. I want to have a car. I want to do these things. I want to be social. That person feels like they no longer have access to you. Then they become more aggressive. A person who's experiencing abuse at home is at the highest risk of being murdered when they're about to leave. Because the person feels like they no longer have that control, and how dare you take that from me? So if you're gone now, I have to then resort to other things, and that could lead to stalking. That could lead to a whole bunch of other things, like they would be let's say that you're going to go somewhere. You said, you know what, I'm going to go downtown. I'm going to go see Susan. Susan lived like maybe 50 minutes away. The abuser will then look at the mileage on your car to actually time that to say it should take this amount of a gas or whatever the thing is for you to reach a Susan, but you took a little bit more. Where did you go? Right? So they try to hold on as tight as possible to not lose that power, that control over you. And when they feel like they're using it, they will up the ante. So perhaps they used to intimidate you by saying, if you do this, I'm going to do it. I'm going to hurt you. But they never actually physically done it. They've emotionally done it, but now that they're about to lose control, then actually they're becoming a little bit more aggressive and physical. They're now pulling you by your hand. They're now slapping you. They're now pulling your hair. They're doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So whenever they feel like they're losing the control is when it's going to go. So we always advise women to, if you're planning to, or seniors, if you're planning to leave, do so, but do so quietly, because you don't want to increase your chances of being murdered and stuff. I'm not sure if you guys watch the news, but when you do, oftentimes they do not label domestic violence as domestic violence or domestic dispute. They always just tells you that, oh, a man and a female, or whatever the case is. But if you should read between the lines, you'll be able to see that this incident was around domestic violence. The femicide rate has increased over COVID. I wish I brought the stats, but the femicide stats have increased over the time of COVID as well, but it's underreported. So a lot of these things, they just go unnoticed, unheard of, unless you're in the community, unless you're a family member and you're aware of it. That's the only way you will know that incident that we're seeing in the news right now is domestic violence related, because the stigma around it is so heavy. People feel as if that domestic violence is just a private matter, right? And so there's not much support and help out there, and there's also not enough for you to feel like, even if you want to help a friend, it's like, how do I help that person? And let's say you're in a job now where your job is to help the victims of violence, but you're being triggered, but you don't know if you have the support to even bring this attention to your boss to say, I'm feeling triggered by one of my clients, or I feel like I need some time for myself because of what you've been experienced, because somebody may have triggered a memory for you, whether it's you yourself that have experienced that, or you may know a family or friend that have experienced domestic violence. So these are some misconceptions of abuse. There are plenty more, but I just want to highlight these ones. It says that one of the biggest misconceptions of partner violence is that abuse is a private matter. It is not. It's a societal problem. If one of us is being experienced, if we're supposed to be live free from abuse, and not all of us are being free from abuse, it means that it's a societal problem. It's not in the home thing for you to stay quiet about. It's not a private matter. People who stay after experiencing abuse are weak. That's not true. There are plenty of reasons why a person with experiencing abuse will decide to stay. One is that I don't want to leave my partner. I want my partner to stop hitting me, right? I want my partner to stop hitting me, but I don't want him to go to jail. I know why I got with my partner. My partner has so much potential. So oftentimes as human, we tend to fall in love or fall in idea with the potential of the person and not the person. So we don't date the reality of the person, we date their potential. This person has a potential to be great. This person has a potential to stop hitting me. But again, oftentimes when you're an abuser, you don't see yourself needing support or help. You don't see it as a problem because it's not a me problem, it's your problem. If you do what I tell you to do, then we wouldn't have ended up here to begin with. So that's what I was saying. It's important for you to realize it doesn't matter what you do. If you're a victim or you have a client that is experiencing abuse, it doesn't matter what that victim do or what you do. The abuser will not stop doing what they're going to do, because especially, like I said, if they feel like they're losing power over you, the rope is going to become tighter. It's impossible to love someone who abuses you. And not true as well. We find like a lot of seniors too as well. They have their kids, their grandkids that are financially abusing them, physically abusing them, sexually abusing them, a whole bunch, but they also don't want to call the police, because again, I love this person, that's my daughter, that's my son. I don't want to see my daughter or my son end up in jail. So again, I want the abuse to stop. I don't want this person to be locked up. I don't want this person to leave me, because if this person leaves me, then who gets my groceries for me? Who pays my bill for me? Who does all these all these things for me to keep me companion, to keep me company when I feel alone. And that abuse is always physical. If the abuse is not physical, sometimes people are not able to identify it, whether you're in it or you see someone that's experiencing it. Because with physical, you can see the bruise, you can see the swelling, you can see the scars. When it's emotional, you don't see those things. When it's financial, you don't see, like, people don't see those things. And financial can be the financial abuse too can also be like, for example, I'm going to give you all the money that you need in the world, but I'm going to control how you spend that money. I'm also going to put you in allowance. So you, every time you have to, like, for example, I need pads, but I have to ask for money to go buy pads. I need to buy this kid's school shoes, but I have to ask permission for doing that. Keep in mind, you're working, you have your own money, but you still have to give that person your money to take control over. And then they provide you with what they want, what they choose to give to you. And that the last one is that men are never victims of abuse. That's like again, it's important for you to realize that abuse does not discriminate, does not care about your gender, does not care about your social status, does not care about that. So victims of violence can look in many different forms, and that includes your gender, your sexual orientation. So if somebody should disclose to you that they're experiencing abuse and stuff, you try not to look at their gender and say like, oh, but you identify as a man. Like, how can you allow somebody as a female to abuse you? Or how, like, or if you're in a same sex relationship, it's not abuse, it's just a dispute. It's just two men fighting or two females fighting, you know, it's not this, it does not classify as domestic violence if you're in the same sex. So oftentimes, again, you're in it, but you don't realize that you're in it because it's same sex. Or it just happens. Like, that's how I grew up. I saw my mom and my dad fighting physically. And now I'm doing this with my partner. So it's normal. What's normal in your home may not be normal in their home. So like, it may be normal in my home for all of us eat at a table, but it may not be, it may not be normal for that same person. Like another person to eat at the table. They go to their room and stuff like that. It's the same thing when people grow up in abuse sometimes, is that if they leave from one home to the next home and the same thing's going on, for them, it's normal. That's how we respond. So it's just always important for you to assess how you're feeling. If you're making decisions based on fear, then chances are you're in an abusive situation. And again, there's different forms of abuse. So don't look because it's not physical, I'm not in an abuse situation. So these are some of the signs that will help you to identify somebody who is in abuse. However, there are plenty more that you can see, especially if you're friends or family of the person and you kind of know their patterns and stuff, and you realize drastic change has happened. Chances are, if they have a partner, you may want to look to see if they're being abused. So some of the signs, again, which is easier for you to see, is the physical. It's the, oh, you're coming with another black eye. Oh, I ran into the wall, or I slipped. You know, a whole bunch of accidents keep happening. So it's easier for you to spot the physical part. And then you have the emotional part where anxiety increases sometimes. And maybe this person had like a high interest in something. So like, let's say they like to go salsa dancing or something, and then that stops. And then they're no longer doing that anymore. Everything for them seems fearful. Even though driving to work seems a little bit fearful. Maybe they just got a relationship and their partner's now stalking them and tracking them and all that stuff. Or I have to be home at a certain time. That could be also a sign of abuse. And also depression, you know, like I don't want to get out of bed. I could just don't want to do anything. I'm not talking to my friends anymore. I'm not talking to my family anymore. That could also be a sign of abuse. And then having suicidal thoughts, like, because sometimes when abuse happens, you know, the abuser will be hidden and saying things like, I wish you were dead, or why don't you just kill yourself? It'd be so much easier on people. Your kids don't love you. You realize, like, my mother-in-law don't like you. I'm your daughter and I don't even like you, mom. Like, you know, like all those things. So, you know, again, if you keep hearing all these things again, like, it's better off that I'm dead, then you're probably gonna start thinking, even though you don't want to do it. But the idea is placed in your head that it's maybe easier for me to move on, and me to move on if I'm dead. Like, everybody else around me would be happier because that's what I keep being told. And if you notice that their partner is constantly calling them and texting them, that could also be a sign of abuse. And that's the person controlling, because I said that you're going to go with Susan, but you should be home by now. Why are you out with Susan so much? Or you have to give updates about wherever, like every stop that you make with your friend, you have to tell your partner, this is where I'm going. If you don't, then it may cause like a big argument that may lead into something for like months on end, because you did not tell your partner where you're going. So I can't trust you anymore. I can't do all these other things because you have betrayed me by not answering my calls and my text messages in a timely manner. And then, of course, making excuses again, like I said, if there's physical signs of abuse, is making excuses. I've slipped, or, he only did this to me because he was drunk, or he only did this to me because of whatever the case is. Just making excuses at all times. And then skipping out on work and school and all those social outings for no clear reasons. Like, I mean, you're an adult, you get to make your own decisions yourself, but sometimes if you realize the patterns are changing and this person's becoming withdrawn, then it's probably a sign of abuse. And again, not because this person, a victim of violence does not always look the same as, like, you cannot tell the victim of violence all the time. Sometimes you can, based on how it's presented, but you never know. When I'm on the line, sometimes I speak to doctors, I speak to lawyers, I speak to legal reps, I speak to people that are involved in the court system, and they themselves sometimes don't even know that they're in an abusive situation because it is not physical. Or sometimes we'll have clients where they're working and that client is triggering certain memories for them, and now they don't know how to do their jobs anymore because they have taken on that person's trauma. So again, we're going to look at how to identify and support those who may be, how to identify and support those who may be victims of abuse. So one of the biggest things that you can do is to be supportive. And one of the ways to do that is to provide a safe and non-judgmental environment for them to speak. And it's your job to listen. When a woman calls us or a victim of violence calls us, we don't just jump into to saving mode. That's not our role. We allow for the person to speak. We allow for them to look at different options that may have, explore different options together. Our job is not to give you advice. Our job is to look at options. We enjoy like when listening to the women speak, because sometimes it's the only time they get to speak up themselves, because somebody's always speaking for them. So it's okay for them to like speak and tell their story and just realize that, you know what, I know what I want and I'm not as stupid as my partner told me or my child have told me. I may be a senior, but I know how to navigate the internet. I may be a senior, but I know what I want. But sometimes people want to take that right and that power away from people. And we don't want to do that. We want to allow for you, when you call us, it's for you to tell us your story and for us to look at options together. So if you're speaking with a friend or family, try to do the same. Try to listen to what they want. Try to listen to see what other options you can provide them. And don't place blame on the victims or the survivors of abuse either. Like, you're stupid. Why do you keep going back, or why did you go back? I would have left the first time he did this to me or she did this to me. I would have never stayed. So those are not things you want to say, because sometimes for a person to open up to you and tell you they've been experiencing abuse at home, it took a lot. So you don't want to shut them down by placing blame on them or placing blame on the abuser. Your job as a friend or family member is to listen, and I know you want to talk to them and tell them that you need to leave, like a whole bunch of other stuff in between you want to tell them, but just listen. And I'm only smiling because a lot of times, like when I speak to women on the phone, they vent their frustration with their family members and stuff about how stupid they are and like how, like, I just wish they would leave them and stuff. And that's okay for you to feel that way. Just try not to tell it to the person that trusted you enough to tell you that they're experiencing abuse. Listen to them and find out what they need. And if you're in a position to provide them resources, then you do so. If you're in a position to provide them emotional support, you do so. But if you're providing support to someone and you feel that you're not equipped to do it, then don't invite that. Don't invite that conversation. To speak about domestic violence is a heavy topic. If it's going to trigger your memory, if it's going to trigger something for you that's not going to bring out the best for you to provide for these people, for victims of abuse, then it's okay for you to start to end the conversation. Don't feel guilty like, oh, I have to listen. You don't have to listen if it's going to trigger your memory into something bad, because you're not going to be of help to that person. And again, allow them to make their own decisions. And if that means that, he hit me today, but tomorrow I'm going to go back, you can tell them about safety. You can do like Are you sure? And if you are sure, how can I support that decision? And that's only if you do though. Don't say that you support it if you do not support it and how you can support them, because you don't want to be a support system that doesn't support. It's not going to work. But also don't leave them out to dry either, because sometimes you're the only person that they're talking to. So what you can do is look at resources and options that are available to whatever that person is going through, but also with the understanding that that person did not tell you everything either. There's some stuff that they've left out of that story. So if you can encourage a person to call to speak with somebody that's knowledgeable around domestic violence, then that would be great too as well. So again, we're looking at ways that we can prevent abuse. So an organization like ours, our goal is for all of us to live abuse-free. Like Sarah mentioned earlier, 1 in 6 in the world is going to experience abuse, and that number is going to increase. So our job is not done here. So we have to look at how can we prevent it. And that's, I feel like one of the biggest ways for us to do that is through education too as well. And is for us to be okay with even having conversation about domestic violence and to realize that it's not a private matter. So one of the ways that we're looking at is by promoting healthy and respectful and nonviolent relationships. So again, we can only do that through education, through educating, and that starts from home too as well, from your little. I was talking earlier about like when you're in school, a lot of time when you're in school as a young person, if your crush hits, if you have somebody who's hitting you all the time or calling you mean names, we may look at it like, oh my God, this person has a crush on me. That is so sweet, right? And then we grow up as adults thinking if our partner does those things to us, that means they're still interested in us, because when we're young, that's what we were told, right? So if we can have healthy conversations at home with our children as well, not saying like inappropriate ages, but it's okay for us to have those conversations to let them know what a healthy relationship looks like. So and again, it's one of the ways that we can do that is to influence it on an individual level, is for us to educate ourselves at all time and be aware. Is for us to also promote healthy relationship and also doing that to bring the community together. So hopefully we can make a bigger change that's more so societal change that we can bring. One of the 3 ways that we thought, because these are the things that we see a lot of women that call us or elder like seniors that experience abuse. These are just the things that we gather to say they would need to support with, and that is through improving home and income security. A lot of victims of violence, when they call us, they don't want to leave their home, so they don't want to go to a shelter, but they also can't afford to live on their own because it's so expensive, and they also don't have a proper job to support that rent or mortgage whatever they're going to pay for. So we would definitely need to improve housing and job security, developing effective prevention programs. So that could mean community outreach. That could mean doing information exchange through other organizations, and then understand that intimate partner violence and elder abuse violence is as a societal change and not a private matter. It's not something that, oh, this person will experience this in the home, so that's their problem. It's not my problem. It is all of our problem. Or else, like Sarah mentioned earlier, it's going to, the worldwide is 1 in 6. And that number will increase if we do not promote healthy relationships and having discussion around domestic violence and elder abuse. You can move to the next slide, Sarah. I am not sure how much of your job requires you to do safety planning, if any of it. But if you could just ask one or all of these questions, if possible, during your assessment with a client, it will be helpful, because it also helps with you providing appropriate resources as well. If what you're looking for is out of your scope of practice, or your services does not, or your agency does not provide those services, give them some appropriate resources that may help them. So one of the questions you could probably ask is, does the victim or the survivor feel safe going home after they've met with you, whether virtually or in person? Are your children in the home? Does the victim or survivor need immediate safety? And that could mean that you may want to talk to the person about seeking shelter or going to a family or friend or something. And if the immediate safety is not an issue, what about their future safety? Is that a concern? And does she or he have a plan of action if she's at risk? So if you could ask some of these basic questions, again, I'm not sure if it's under your scope of practice or if it's something you can ask with, but it is just good for you to ask one or two of these questions to see how you can navigate the system. If this person's coming to you and they're new to Canada, find out their immigration status and find out if they know what their rights are. Because oftentimes if they're sponsored, their spouse will threaten them to say, if you tell, then if you tell the police that I'm abusing you, then I'm going to send you back home. Or you're legally entitled to work in Canada, but you don't know that because your partner told you that the job that you have is under the table, meaning that if you tell on me, I'm going to report you that you're working, but you're entitled to work, but because you're not aware of your immigration status or know what the law is, you're going to fall victim of these things whenever your partner is trying to take control of these things. So again, just do some basic safety planning with these people, with the clients that you're seeing. And again, if you can provide appropriate resources, referrals for them to get the help that they need, whether it's a food bank, because they haven't eaten days, or there's or do they need clothing? Does the kids have formula? Do they have medication that they have yet to purchase? And again, this oftentimes a lot of immigrant women, when they call us, they don't know these rights that they have. Seniors may be going through financial abuse because they're relying on their children to pay their bills, but then they don't realize that you can do automatic payment or something. But because the children have convinced them that I have to go to the bank and pay for you, but you realize that your bills are not being paid, then it's because your children or your grandchild or whatever the case is using your funds to fund their lifestyle and not funding yours. Like if, for example, if you're seeing a senior in your neighborhood that she usually have her nails and her hair done, but all of a sudden she's, like her hair is not done, it's unkept, her nails are not done, that could also be a sign you're losing weight, or sometimes you're overly medicated too as well. Like if you're a senior and you have somebody that's supposed to give you medication, sometimes they over medicate you or they don't medicate you at all. So those could also be a sign of elder abuse. So again, abuse does not look the same for everybody. It's different. So yeah, Sarah.
Thanks, LaToya. So we're just going to wrap up with a few different resources that are available for people, and then we'll take questions if there are any questions. So these are our numbers for the Assaulted Women's Helpline, our TTY number as well, and the Senior Safety Line. And that's our website where more information is available and also online chat. So we encourage you to encourage people to give us a call if you think that's a resource that could be helpful to them. And like I said before, I know you work all over the province, but in Toronto, we're connected very closely to the Violence Against Women shelters, and we do have information about shelters in all other parts of the province as well. A few other crisis lines that might be familiar, obviously Kids Help Phone. They have a lot of great options for younger people. They're available 24/7 on the phone. If kids are not phone people, they do have text, and I think, like I said earlier, Facebook Messenger or online messaging options that they can use if they need some support. FEMID is the Francophone crisis line for women experiencing violence. So any Francophone women are free to call them. We don't provide services in French because they provide those services. And Talk for Healing is a crisis line for Indigenous women for just a variety of issues. And again, they're available 24/7. I believe they may have an online chat option as well. And then a few other resources. These are sort of large organizations in Toronto that we are often referring people to. The Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence Care Center in Toronto is at Women's College Hospital. So they support hospitals throughout Toronto in the emergency department. So sexual assault care nurses are available 24/7 if someone presents to an emergency department. They're part of a network of sexual assault and domestic violence care centers throughout the province. So there is a hospital or hospitals in most places where you might be working who is, they either have it in individual hospitals or there's sort of a centralized team that will attend to any emergency room if people present there. And they also, depending on where they are, they provide various other kinds of follow-up care and referral to resources. The Toronto Rape Crisis Center, Multicultural Women Against Rape, also has a crisis line, and they provide a wide variety of services, including counseling to survivors of sexual violence and their family members and friends. And that's their website there as well. And the last one we wanted to highlight is the Barbara Schleifer Commemorative Clinic, which is in Toronto, and they offer legal counseling and interpretation services to marginalized and racialized populations of women who have survived violence. They're a really great resource. They're also really, really busy all the time, but they have a variety of great support groups and different kinds of services, and they do translation. And they also do a lot of legal support work for people, which can be difficult to find. But again, we know they are, like everybody else, very, very busy. And that's all we had to share with you today. So I see there are a couple of things in the chat, so I'll let Marianne let us know if there are any questions that people had.
Apparently there was a tornado warning wherever Jody was.
Oh.
There's no questions at the moment, but I told people that they could unmute and ask questions if they wanted to. And I think I'll just kind of get us started. Thank you so much. I mean, the information is sadly riveting. Like we go through all of these things. I'll hear someone coming in later. And I see Suzanne has a question, so I'll turn that over. You can unmute Suzanne and answer your question or ask your question.
Thank you for such a great presentation. This is something that I'm very passionate about because I do work in the courts and I see the need for it. I work as a family mediator. I would like to start advocating for this, and I think coming together collectively as women is really important. And there's got to be a solution here somewhere. Everybody is working so hard with this group, and there is such a demand, and I've seen the increase in these types of issues. And I am just wondering if there are any groups that are kind of like stepping back and trying to address this systemic problem, or advocating or writing MPs, or what's going on in that capacity, if there's any other way to get involved.
There are tons of tables that you can join as volunteering. I'm a part of a couple of them. The issue is that a lot of people view domestic violence as a private matter, and so it's our job that we have to keep on educating. That's the best way that we can do it until something comes along. I feel like social service is one of those jobs where if funding is supposed to get cut, it's going to come through the social services, which does impact domestic violence victims too as well. Unfortunately, there are movements there. It's just that we have to go there and we have to look for those organizations that are doing it. But we're trying.
Okay, and just in addition to that, because I find sometimes it can be really difficult. I don't work with this demographic a lot, but I don't want to. Sometimes I think the system turns the victims into victims, right? And I know the best way is to really through empowerment and through building them up. And I don't know, with the work that you do, like what your philosophy is and what you see as the most effective way. I heard some good things, right? Where you let them decide. And is that part of really being able to empower them?
It's it's hard. It is like, even if we're well diverse in domestic violence and stuff, it's one of those things where if you're experiencing domestic violence, again, if it's not physical, then you're not being abused. Right? So if you're not educated on the different types of abuse, you're going to live like that for the rest, hopefully not the rest of your life, but you just keep maneuvering through life. People always say like, oh, we have good moments, but it's not they have good moments, just that you're leaving from a domestic dispute and you're about to enter another one. So the cycle just keeps on going. But to answer your question, I think we're just trying to see what will stick. We're throwing a lot of stuff out there and seeing what will stick and trying to get the right people on our side.
And I'm just going to jump in to add that if you're interested in hearing more about, we don't do a lot of research, we're mostly providing direct service, but if you're interested in hearing more about the kinds of research people are doing and hearing their presentations, the Violence Against Women Network, I think, is based at Western University in London. They have a website and they do a lot of really great presentations, and they have a lot of sort of working papers and things where you can see what kinds of research networks are out there as well and what other organizations are doing. And there's always a lot of people to connect with in the chats of those those webinars who work in a variety of different fields as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's an excellent resource. You're right, Sarah. Haley has a question.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thanks so much for this presentation. It was really, really interesting. I have sort of a two-part question. The first part is for survivors of elder abuse. This sounds like a sort of stupid question, but what are the options in terms of, like, particularly if they have physical disabilities or they're being cared for by their abuser, like, how do they get to a shelter? What are the options for them finding safety? I'm like trying to play it out in my mind, and I'm just sort of coming up blank. And then the second question is, I run a nonprofit where we foster pets for survivors of domestic violence and family violence. And I'm wondering if that's something, is that an issue you see on the elder abuse hotline, essentially people using pets as a way to control the elderly individuals? So yeah, I'm just sort of curious about both of those, but thank you. That was an awesome presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions. It's funny because, like, the question you ask is what we get every day. So it's one of those things, if just like how we would never tell a woman who's experiencing abuse, we would never tell to leave, we will never tell the elder abuse to leave either, because we still want for them to make their own decisions for themselves. Right. Oftentimes they feel like everybody's taking my choices away from me. This is the only one I have. And it may not be a healthy one, but God damn it, it's mine. You know, so they are always under, my daughter wants me to stop dating him. But to be honest, he comes home and like he may be abusive, but at least I have a company in the house. So we do have those, but if a senior who like is not able-bodied and able to, you know, like to flee on their own, when they speak to us, we always try to see if we can schedule a time, or not a time, but like, if the abuser is not there, can you call us when he's not there so we can look at shelter? Sometimes the shelter, depending on where the person's coming from, they will provide transportation. There's other transportation services out there. It's just that you have to schedule those ones, which make it difficult. Only time it becomes a little bit easier if the abuser is working, then yes, you can schedule those transportation. But if they're not, you kind of have to rely on like an Uber, taxi, and just pray that they have some kind of financial income. Right. Because if the help is there, but there's no transportation, where do you go? So we will try our best to work with what they have. And that's why I said it's always best to let the person who's experiencing abuse speak, because we'll see different options that are available. Sometimes when we're hearing about abuse, we're like, oh my God, you have to save you right now. But I don't want to be saved. I want you to listen to me, because I haven't spoken to anybody in months, days. I want you to listen to me. That's the only thing that you can do for me right now. And as frustrating as it is, that's all you can do. Is to listen, because if you fight back, you may never hear back from the senior again. That's experiencing violence, and that's not what you want. You want to work with them at their pace. Mm-hmm. Even though they've experienced, nobody knows their story like that. Mm-hmm. You know the pattern of the abuser. You know, if you see the jawline start clenching, you see the fist start, then you know something's about to happen. The abuser gets paid on Friday, which means he's going to come home drunk, which means there's going to be a fight. You can spot different kind of patterns. So when they speak, we listen, and then we look at different options. Look at how can we do safety planning? How can we do risk assessment? Does this person have access to a gun? And like you mentioned, pets. One of the biggest things that we've seen through the pandemic with pets is that the abusers were sexually assaulting the pets in front of the seniors and stuff like that. I'm no longer, because if I hit you, you're going to call the police on me. But if I assault the dog sexually or physically, if the police are not going to look for animals to see if they're abused. Like they'll look for kids if they're abused, but animals not so much. Yeah. They'll look for humans and everybody else, but not the animals. So a lot of seniors were I wish I could tell the numbers that we received of the animals that were sexually abused. It was a lot.
Wow.
It was a lot during the pandemic. And it breaks my heart because it was like to hear what was going on with cats, the dogs, the birds and all that stuff. And so during the pandemic, the law changed where if the police knew about like sexual, like the dogs are being, I forgot the term that they use, but if the dogs are being penetrated and stuff like that, that's actually grounds that you can be arrested for.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not a thing before, right? But now the pandemic has happened. Like I said, the increase of it has gone. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I won't share the story with you because I don't want to trigger anybody.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But yeah, so they do use medications, and they use pets, and they use grocery pickups, and they use the banking information as a way to control. So again, listen. And then when you have the resources, then you can provide. But before you provide resources, check the phone numbers to make sure that it still works. Check the services to make sure that it's still there. Like if you're called, like we have people that call us all the time. We're just calling to see if the number is still in service, and I want to know what services you have available before we pass the resources over. So those are things that you would do for yourself and for your clients if you're working with somebody else or a friend. So, you know, do not react like, oh my God, because then they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm scaring you, and now you're not going to listen to me anymore. Like I said, if you become burnt out and it's too much for you, take a step back, and you're okay with that. You're not a bad friend, a bad family member for taking a step back and making sure that you are okay. So the long answer to your question is that we do get those. We do get calls.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's a very sobering thought, isn't it? And I think the first time I heard anything about sexual abuse towards animals, the person said, oh, you probably hear this all the time. And I hadn't heard it before at all. And I was really disturbed, right? And I think, you know, you're absolutely right to talk to your colleagues and to share, to make sure that you can process that properly. And I think that's a really key point, Latoya, that you've made. Latoya, you mentioned, you know, about those questions that we could ask and in the our clients, and those are all excellent things that I hope we're all asking. You know, these are part of screening for domestic violence, intimate partner violence that mediators are responsible to do in every case. You know, what we're not responsible to do, though, is to be experts in these areas. And so I think you coming on here and sharing, like, here's a place where we can refer, and that warm referral I think is very important that you spoke of too, so that you know the phone number works, you know the person's going to get a really a supportive response. And that's why, you know, when I saw, I think I was updating our member organization information with Assaulted Women's Helpline and Senior Safety Line, and you just mentioned, oh, we could do a presentation. I'm like, yes, let's do this again, because you know, sometimes we work by ourselves in our offices mostly. And so it's really nice to know that you can, that website is excellent. You know, you can start giving that information early to people. Just say, oh, like, I wonder about that, or you've told me this, and you don't have to assess as a mediator. We leave that to you and to make the safety plan. So I think it's just an excellent resource, and I can't thank you enough for coming to share this with us. It really is just unfortunate that this has increased so much, and that we need these at the top of our Rolodex to make sure that we can create that warm referral for our clients. Any last words that you have, Sarah or Latoya? I'll hand it over to you, and then I think we're almost at 2 o'clock. My eyes aren't great.
I think so. Yeah, just I just want to add that if you are calling us for yourself or on behalf of a client, or encouraging them to call, we don't have a hold system. I don't think we mentioned it earlier. So if they'll get a recorded message that no one is available currently, but we do encourage them to call back. It's just for their safety that we don't keep them on the line. So if everybody happens to be busy, just encourage them to call back, because we're always here.
Oh, I see. That's a very good point. Okay, excellent. And are there different resources for young women? You know, the Senior Safety Line, and I've heard a lot from younger women that have been, or would they just call the Assaulted Women's Helpline too? And have you noticed an increase in younger women, teenage relationships, that sort of thing?
If they're 16 or older, they would call us. Younger than that, they would call Kids Help Phone. And if they do, obviously we don't actually know how old anybody is. If somebody gets on the phone and tells the counselor they're 21, then
Yeah.
they're 21 as far as we know. Kids Help Phone, there is a resource for post-secondary students called Good to Talk,
Oh,
just
okay.
about mental health in general.
Okay.
It's not specifically for abuse, but it is
Uh-huh.
specifically for college and university students.
Very nice.
And
Thank
we
you so
have a couple of resources in our database. If they do call and they're underage, we will provide them, but we encourage them to call like the kids' cell phone because they're a little bit more equipped with a lot more resources than we do. I saw something in the chat that somebody wanted to see the slides with all the resources that they had, just to see if they got everything.
Okay. Okay, good. Take screenshots, people. Great.
But it was good to have us here. We really appreciate it. If you have anything, any changes to your services or program, please let me know. And like, please let myself or Sarah know, and we'll update our team with resources that you do have.
Right.
We do actually do some referrals to your organization.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially when it's related to seniors, we're always like, yo, it's a new
We
pilot.
did a lot. Yeah. We're good partners to each other.
Yes, so we
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really appreciate having you to be doing the work that you do. So thank you so much for even having us and considering us.
Of course.
We
Yeah.
do
Thank
a lot
you.
of materials
You're-
as well. So if you need materials like pens, we can do that for you too as well.
Okay. Thanks so much. And there's lots of thanks in the chat for this and your sharing your wisdom. So we'll sign off now. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
And take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye.